הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. Let the heavens rejoice, let the heavens rejoice, and the earth exult, and the earth exult. Let the sea and all within it thunder. Sing to Adonai, sing to Adonai, a brand new song, a brand new song. Sing praises for all God's wonders. Shiru, Shiru, Ladonai, Ladonai. Hadash, Shiru, Shiru, Ladonai, Ladonai, Kol haaretz, haaretz. Let every voice, make a joyful noise, make a joyful noise to God's glory among the nations. With the rivers and trees, with the rivers and trees, clap our hands, we clap our hands. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are glad to come to you virtually in your homes, wherever you may be, on your TV, your laptop, your iPad, your phone, whatever device is connecting you to Shabbat this evening. I must say, it has been maybe 10 months since Lisa and I have led services together in person. So for me, this is a really lovely Shabbat Shalom moment. It's our first in-person service of 2021. We probably need a Shakyanu for that, but we're glad to be here with Jerry as well, and Misty and all of you. You know, in figuring out our own identities, we distinguish ourselves by deciding internally who we are, as well as comparing ourselves with others. And so for the Jewish people, we often wonder what makes us different from any other nation, how we are alike and how we are different. Now, one answer is in an often asked question in Jewish legal literature. Why, for many mitzvot like charity, or visiting the sick, is there no blessing? And the Torah answers that the formula of a blessing, quote, who has sanctified us with his mitzvot and commanded us, that's the Kiddushanu Vitzivanu, is designed to emphasize that we are commanded to do certain things that other nations are not, other people are not. But when it comes to moral behaviors, we're not distinguished by difference. Other people visit the sick and give money for the poor and so forth. And so what distinguishes Jews alongside Jewish study are specific Jewish behaviors. Hebrew prayer, keeping kosher, observing Shabbat. Ritual actions addressed to one another and, of course, to God. The Jewish way of being in the world is about ethics, but it is never about ethics alone. It's also about a language and a relationship to God and to one's own soul and to each other. And that language of observance and of liturgy and of custom is what deserves to be blessed. Lighting Shabbat candles is one of those Jewish things that we do, and we invite you to do that with us now.
Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner, v'tzivanu Shel Shabbat. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la.
We continue singing the words of Shalom Alechem. It's a call and response. I'll be responding, and you're welcome to respond with me.
Shalom Alechem,
Shalom Alechem,
Malachei Hasharet,
Malachei Hasharet,
Malachei Ni Melech, Malachei Hamlachim,
Malachei Hamlachim,
Hakadosh Baruch Hu,
Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
Peace be to you, O ministering angels, messengers of the Most High. Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Boachem l'shalom,
Boachem l'shalom,
Malachei hashalom,
Malachei Hashalom,
Malachei Ni Melech, Malachei Hamlachim,
Malachei Hamlachim,
Hakadosh Baruch Hu,
Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
Enter in peace, O messengers of peace, angels of the Most High. Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Barchuni l'shalom,
Barchuni l'shalom,
Malachei Hamlachim,
Malachei Hashalom,
Malachei Ni Melech, Malachei Hamlachim,
Malachei Hamlachim,
Hakadosh Baruch Hu,
Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
bless me with peace, O messengers of peace, angels of the Most High. Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Seitem l'chalom,
Shaltem l'shalom,
Malachei hashalom,
Malachei Hashalom,
Malachei
always welcome to rise where you are for the words of Hatzi Kaddish.
Yitkaral v'yitkadash amei rabba.
Amen.
Ba'ama tivrach yirutei v'yahamlich malchutei b'chayachon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei l'chol beit Yisrael b'gala u'v'zman kariv v'yimeru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'almei almaya yitbarach yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalau shemei dekudusha le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran belma v'yimeru
Amen.
Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam
Continue chanting and singing together the words of Ma'ariv Aravim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bivaro Ma'ariv Aravim Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bivaro Ma'ariv Aravim Bechokma poteach she'arim ubituna mishane itim umachalim et hazmanim umesader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono barakia kirtzono Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bivaro Ma'ariv Aravim Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bivaro Ma'ariv Aravim
As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me, but did you mean the struggle for me as well? Do not let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, and Shema, to listen. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
If you haven't already, return to your seat. If you are standing, I invite you to do so wherever you are. We continue with the words of Ve'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at the foot of Mount Sinai. That wherever we go, it seems eternally Egypt. We know there is a better place, a promised land. That the winding way to that promise passes through this pandemic wilderness. And that there is truly no way to get from here to there except by banding together and marching as one.
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha ledar v'kodesh, Torah tehilot oseh pele, Torah tehilot oseh pele.
night long.
Micah mocha ba'alim Adonai, Micah mocha ledar b'kodesh, Norah tehilot oseh peled, Norah tehilot oseh peled.
And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 ya la 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 la. The prayer of Hashkivenu, as we've said so many times, is one of the evening coming and asking for security and safety in the midst of darkness. We've been wandering in a sort of darkness as a global community since sometime in early 2020. And it is not quite bright yet, although we do see a light in our future. Tonight, when we sing Hashkivenu, we not only sing it to ask for protection and shelter from the unseen virus in our midst, but also for protection and shelter from the forces that would strive to divide us rather than unite us, that we may find unity and healing as a nation, and that we as a Jewish people may find allies in other communities that we can stand and march with to fight for what is right, for what is just, and what our prophets believe to be true. So we offer these words.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Shekinah comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be. Let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Shekinah comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be. Lisa, you want to tell us a little bit about this next piece?
Yes, this is a piece. Let's see if I can remember the composer's name. I believe her name was Judy Small. She was a lawyer in England.
Right. No, Australia, right?
I think it was Australia.
Yeah.
And she wrote this song, and I thought it was fitting for the occasion and kind of inspiring. It's kind of an old folk sort of style.
Because
song.
I didn't say at the beginning of our service that tonight is what we call Shabbat Tzedek. It's the Shabbat of Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, and it's the Shabbat in which we honor the partnership of Jews in the civil rights movement and in any social movement that's fought to seek justice. And so it's appropriate that you pick the Song of Change. Exactly. I should have said that at the beginning.
That's okay. Until the swords turn into plowshares, until the children eat their fill, until the mansions admit the lowly, we have no cause for standing still. When the voices of conscience calling lead not to prison but freedom's road, we'll see the false gods around us falling. It's then we'll harvest the seeds we sowed. Until the swords turn into plowshares, until the children eat their fill, until the mansions admit the lowly, we have no cause for standing still. When the blood of black brothers flowing makes us weep tears for everyone, when the hatred's no longer glowing, we'll know the new world has begun. Until the swords turn into plowshares, until the children eat their fill, until the mansions admit the lowly, we have no cause for standing still. So keep your eyes on the far horizon. The prize we're seeking is shining there. Oh, it's a long haul, but it's a strong call that leads us onward to open air. Until the swords turn into plowshares, until the children eat their fill, until the mansions admit the lowly, we have no cause for standing still. Until the mansions admit the lowly, we have no cause for standing still.
Invite you to rise once again for the words of the Amidah.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei HaKol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei v'Nehem, L'man Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Hozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ezrat Sarah, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
As always, we give a little bit of time for each of us for some silent prayer, meditation, and reflection. We take that time now.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Adonai Tzuri V'Goali Amen.
We think of those in our community who are in need of healing on this Shabbat. We direct our prayers and thoughts to Sonia Marco, Steve Geringer, Violet Colton, Michelle Giffen, Paul Richter, Ron Galbraith, Savannah Morris, Jane Sherberg, TJ Cohen, Edria Rack.
Lanu
ancestors.
Help us renew our faith.
Help us renew our faith.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Bring peace to all our days.
Bring peace to all our days.
Restore our strength of body.
Restore strength of body.
Help clarify our minds.
Help clarify our minds.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Rejuvenate our lives.
Rejuvenate our lives.
Refine our lives. Refine our lives. Thank you for all these blessings.
Thank you for all these blessings.
Throughout our days and nights.
Throughout our days and nights.
We celebrate the journey.
We celebrate the journey.
This precious gift of life.
This precious gift of life.
Refine our life. Refine our life.
When Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff won the runoff election in Georgia, Reverend Warnock said, "I think Abraham Joshua Heschel, the rabbi who said that when he marched with Dr. King, he felt like his legs were praying, I think that he and Dr. King are smiling at this moment." I was profoundly moved by Warnock's homage to the unbroken allegiance of King and Heschel against the forces that seek to divide us. Each year, the Reform movement honors the legacy of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by commemorating, as I mentioned earlier, the Shabbat nearest to MLK Day as Shabbat Tzedek. And on this Shabbat, we remember the life and work of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and celebrate the hard-fought victories of the civil rights movement. It's also a time of reflection and recommitment as our movement renews its efforts in the struggle for racial justice in North America. In Parshat Vayera, which coincides with Shabbat Tzedek quite frequently, as it does this year, God instructs Moses and Aaron to deliver the Israelites from Egypt. The brothers approach Pharaoh to demand their freedom, but Pharaoh refuses. In response to this cruelty, God unleashes the first of 7 plagues upon the Egyptians. In Vayera, we read about the unrelenting pursuit of justice of our early leaders. Rather than passively accept the unfair treatment of the Israelites, Moses and Aaron directly protest their condition in the halls of power. When their demands are rebuffed, they remain steadfast, and they continue to lobby Pharaoh on behalf of the Jewish people. In the Torah, Jews are taught to accept others without prejudice or bias. The Torah states, "You shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart. Reprove your kinsman, but incur no guilt because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your countrymen. Love your fellow as yourself. I am the Eternal. Our Jewish tradition is replete with instances of moral reckoning when we are asked to be present and account for Ayecha. We are asked, where are you? And we respond with a full-throated Hinenu. We are right here. But while we are often quick to call out the injustice we see in our communities and our country with regards to people of color or those in the LGBTQ plus communities, for example, we are sometimes guilty of instigating and enabling prejudice in our own Jewish community. What is it that I mean? Well, take my friend and colleague, Rabbi Angela Warnick Bookdahl. She is the first Korean American ordained rabbi and cantor. She looks Asian. She is Asian. In college, she would lead the Reform Minyan. She chanted Torah, read the entire liturgy in Hebrew, all while wearing a talit. But inevitably, someone would come up to her afterwards and ask, "Are you Jewish?" Many would say to her, "Surely you understand there's a Jewish look. And you don't exactly have it." Jews are a people with Jewish last names and Jewish features. We even have our own genetic diseases. Yes, she does understand what the Jewish community was telling her, that Jewish peoplehood was akin to a race, something immutable and hereditary, an exclusive club you had to be born into. And even though she had a Jewish father with her Korean face, she would never really be Jewish. Jewish peoplehood is powerful and real, but too often we misunderstand what that means. And so tonight I want to share some of what I learned from my friend and colleague, Rabbi Bookdahl. I want to debunk some of the myths around Jewish peoplehood. The first, we Jews are not a race. The earliest biblical reference to the Israelite people as a race is made by Pharaoh in Egypt. He used it to justify our enslavement and to kill our firstborns. He stoked racist fear that the Israelites would grow to outnumber Egyptians and rise up against them. Pharaoh's message to his subjects echoes through the centuries: Jews will not replace us. The first historical articulation of Judaism as a race was during the Spanish Inquisition. Even those Jews who converted to Christianity, they were still considered to have polluted impure Jewish bloodlines. And later, in an effort to dehumanize Jews, the Nazis used pseudoscience to claim that Jews had identifiable racial features and a genetic propensity towards certain behaviors and beliefs. The notion of Judaism as a race is a construct created by our enemies to justify anti-Semitism, violence, and even genocide. And yet we Jews cling still to this idea of race, that there's a genetic blueprint, a look that makes us what we are. But that's another myth. Jewish peoplehood is not about a pure Jewish bloodline or survival of one strain of DNA. We Jews have never been just one color or one cluster of chromosomes. When the Torah first calls us a people coming out of Egypt, we are described as an Erev Rav, a mixed multitude. And when we are exiled from Jerusalem over 2,000 years ago, we spread out to every imaginable corner of the world. Jews went to India and Yemen and Russia, China, Ethiopia. The majority of Jews in Israel today are not Ashkenazi, but they're actually Jews of color from Middle Eastern, African, and Asian countries. And in America, while many think of Jews as white people, even that assumption is outdated. In 2019, the first Jewish population study to measure Jews of color in America found that Jews of color represent at least 12 to 15% of American Jews, and that is only growing. It's a stunning statistic. It's about 1 in every 7 Jews. It means that out of approximately 7.5 million Jews in America, about 1 million are Jews of color. 1 million. Now let me guess. You're thinking, I don't believe that, Rabbi. I don't see them anywhere in my Jewish community. And you're sort of right. On this Shabbat Tzedek, we need to do a little soul searching and ask why it is we don't see a whole lot of Jews of color in our community. Rabbi Buchdahl tells the story about the time last year that a black rabbinical student preached from her synagogue's pulpit. Robert, a black congregant in his 20s, a student, had the courage to reach out and tell her about his experience. He said that the first time he walked into their synagogue, a security guard trailed him inside and watched him suspiciously. He almost didn't return after that, but he did. And while he loved coming to Shabbat services, back when you could actually come to Shabbat services, he said he faced questions from congregants every single week. What neighborhood are you from? Who are you here with? And the ubiquitous, are you Jewish? Now, we might hear Robert's story and excuse our community response as awkward inquisitiveness, well-meaning curiosity. But just imagine that this was Robert's experience walking into, say, the Green Hills Mall, maybe Nordstrom. He's regarded with suspicion the minute he walks in the door, and too many people asking, "Can I help you?" with the assumption that he doesn't really belong. We would clearly see that as racism. But we don't see this behavior as racist when we do the exact same thing to him in synagogue based on the color of his skin. Jews of color experience racism in the Jewish community. If you look Jewish, you've never been asked these questions. They only get asked of strangers. And because Jews of color hear these questions every time they walk into a Jewish community, that's exactly how they feel, like a perpetual stranger. And I have to think that would be exhausting. We are in the midst of a national discussion about race and racism in America that's probably long overdue. And on this Shabbat Tzedek, there may be no more important work we each need to make than to examine our own racial assumptions and prejudices. The Jewish community needs to see the fight against racism in our country as our fight. I know if we don't fundamentally rethink our tribal, racial notion of Jewish peoplehood, that we're sunk. The demographic trends are inevitable. We will lose future generations of Jews and their children, and we will be poorer for it. Letting go of the idea of Jewish race is difficult because there's this comfort. It's a real comfort in expecting that we can pick out our own. And there's a pride in feeling like there's something inherited, even divinely ordained, about Jewish chosenness. But making our identity a tribal race is not only exclusive, it's dangerous. Because, and here's where I want to debunk one more final myth, race is not scientific. Geneticists and anthropologists agree that race is a man-made invention with no real basis in science or biology. Further, anthropologist Ashley Montague writes, the idea of race was the deliberate creation of an exploiting class seeking to maintain and defend its privileges. Or as Ta-Nehisi Coates bluntly says, race is the child of racism, not the father. The idea is brilliantly fleshed out in Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste. She convincingly shows how race has been manipulated to create hierarchies of human value, to assert the supremacy of one race over another, to create caste systems. Whether it was blacks in America, untouchables in India, or Jews in Nazi Germany, The pillars of caste systems are remarkably similar across time and geography. For example, did you know that when Hitler created his caste system in order to exterminate the so-called Jewish race, the Third Reich actually studied America's race laws for ideas? Yale law professor James Whitman wrote that in the 1930s, the United States was the leading racist jurisdiction in the world. Nazi lawyers, as a result, looked very closely at and were ultimately influenced by American race law. In particular, Nazis admired the Jim Crow-era laws that discriminated and segregated Black Americans from white Americans. They adopted America's anti-miscegenation laws, too. But banning Jewish and Aryan marriages posed a special problem for the Nazis. Because at the time, intermarriage rates were over 60%. With interracial children, it was hard to define who is Jewish and who is not. So, the Nazis borrowed from the American obsession with categorizing race by fractions of perceived ancestry. In 1890, the United States Census included racial categories for those who were a quarter Black, quadroon, or an eighth Black, octoroon. You could be 1/16 Black with a drop of Negro blood, and you were considered Black. As I said, race is not scientific. The Nuremberg laws ultimately defined a Jew as anyone with at least one Jewish grandparent, regardless of religious practice. For the Nazis, even conversion could not overcome Jewish ancestry. Through these laws, the Nazis established a caste system that put Jews at the bottom as Untermenschen, subhuman. This dehumanizing view of Jews as an inferior race was critical in enabling the Nazis to persuade Germany and much of Europe to participate in or stand by the murder of 6 million Jews by the end of the war. It was a caste system that the Nazis learned in great part by studying the legal caste system that we created for Black Americans. After World War II, when the State of Israel was founded with a mission to take in Jewish refugees, Israel incredibly adopted the Nazis' quarter ancestry rule, 1/4 Jewish ancestry. It was the definition that was the foundation for defining who was eligible for the law of return. And it was taught that the reasoning was, if it's enough Jewish blood to get you killed, it would be enough Jewish blood to get you saved. But why did we allow a racial definition imposed by our enemies to become our benchmark for who is a Jew? This one Jewish grandparent definition for the law of return does not, however, match Israel's definition for Jewish status, which requires proof of Jewish matrilineage. This results in a shameful condition where Jewish immigrants can be considered Jewish enough to come to Israel under the law of return, to fight in the Israeli army, even to die for the Jewish state, but then not be considered Jewish enough to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. So once again, defaulting to a racial definition of the Jewish blood creates a problematic definition of Jewish peoplehood. Heredity is important and it's meaningful. It's powerful to imagine an ancestral line of Jews that goes all the way back to Sinai, but it's really time to stop thinking of Jewish peoplehood as a race once and for all. Instead, we can think of the Jewish people as family. You can become family by birth, adoption, and choice. And you can create a bond that is stronger than blood through covenant, like we do in marriage. The Jewish Brit, our covenant with God, is how we become family. Because the foundation of Jewish peoplehood doesn't come from myths about race, but from our covenant with God and with one another. Instead of defining Jewishness by having the correct fraction of Jewish blood, let every Jew who feels bound by this covenant be seen, counted equally as part of the Jewish people, just as God does. God counts us all because we are each of us made in God's image. No matter the color of our skin, the shape of our face and facial features. But Tselem Elohim, we are all one family, made in the image of God.
We are made in the image of God, each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim. We are made in the image of God, each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim. In every person's heart there is a divine spark. He and she and they and you and I, all beings of the earth are of infinite worth, all equal in the eyes of Adonai. We are made in the image of God, each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim. We are made in the image of God, each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim. Each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim.
We join together for the words of Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula yotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kigoei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam. V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim akadosh baruch hu. V'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
We honor the following yortzites on this Shabbat: Mary Affronti, Irving Kaplan, Thatcher Carr, Ralph Max Cohen, Kenneth Cutler, Lawrence Eggle, Deborah Ann Golden, Lucille Hindis, Belinda Ricky Isaacs, Samuel Itzkowitz, Marilyn Jacobs, Bess Corral, Tilly Lipp, Stephen Newman, Diana Rossman, Leroy Allen Schwartz, Rabbi Michael Signer, Irving Slotchever, Melvin H. Stein, and William Zell. We continue to mourn for Rich Moschel, Henry Foyer, Dr. Bob Sirkin, Aidan Becker, Robert Golden, Des Zamek, Elaine Farinacci, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Charlene Krahili, John Giffen, Faye Sirkin, Joyce Murray, and Richard Bourne. As always, please share the names of those I did not mention, and we include them in our prayer, Kaddish Yatom. Yikadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach yirate v'amlich malchute. B'chayachon uv'yomechon uv'chayedech Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'olam omei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudasha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechamata. Da'amiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may the memories of our loved ones every day bless us. Together we say amen. Well, I am not going to read 15 announcements, but I'm going to hit the highlights. As always, Torah study tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We have all sorts of great adult ed that is just launched, including Tai Chi, which takes place tomorrow at 11 a.m. You can connect to all of our adult ed offerings on our website. Let's see. Our Micah office will be closed on Monday in observance of MLK Day. Motown to Micah is a one-stop shop, one night only adult ed event. It's coming this Thursday, the 21st. It's our very own Miss Lisa Silver's story. And I believe that's at, what time did we schedule that for, Lisa?
It's either 7 or 7:30.
It's on the website, and you can connect, and I'll be there, and obviously Lisa will be there, and it's going to be great, so we hope you'll join us for that. Shabbat services will be, once again, live streamed from our sanctuary next week. I'm going to leave you there. Lots to participate in, but just make sure to check out our website and not to miss anything from your weekly e-blast as well. Without further ado, we'll make Kiddush.
All right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho v'ahava u'ratzon himchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit, ki hu yam techila l'mikra'e kodesh, Zecher letziat Mitzrayim, Kivanu v'acharta, V'tanu kidashta, Mikol ha'amim, V'shabbat kodshecha, Be'ahava u'v'ratzon, Hinchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
L'chaim. So, Miss Lisa, I understand we do have a closing song.
We do have a closing song, a little bit of hope for this weekend.
I love it.
Only light can drive the darkness away. today.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. Have a safe and warm long weekend. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.